Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday. About half the work week in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Tons to do on this Wednesday. JD PicKell from On 3 Sports, host of The Hard Count, going to be with us in 15 minutes. Talking national college football. We'll certainly touch on LSU and Alabama as well. It's a What If Wednesday. Got a few of those already in the hopper, but if you've got a What If and want to throw it at us in the Bayou Ford chat or on Twitter, we will certainly take it. Some Saints talk at the end of this hour as well. Matthew Bruni is going to join us each week on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock to talk some LSU basketball. We are now in full swing with hoops. LSU's men in Manhattan, Kansas tomorrow take on the Kansas State Wildcats. And the women did a great job today in signing the #1 class in the nation. We'll talk to Matthew about all that coming up an hour from right now. I've got some key matchups with LSU and Florida that we'll get to at 2:15. And, of course, our SEC Power Rankings coming up at 2:30 today. I'm feeling pretty confident that I've got everybody where they need to be at this point. I'm now realizing that I don't have that sheet. Cassie, do you have that sheet, the Power Ranking sheet? I think it's back there in the war room. We'll go get it in the next hour and a half. But I did prepare them. I just forgot to get them back from Cassie. But we'll get to those at 2:30 as we do each and every week. Let's start the same way we do every single day with our opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
LSU in Florida from the Swamp, 2:30 Central Time on Saturday. And the biggest story of this week is most certainly going to be the availability of DJ Lagway. And a lot was made, of course, 2 weeks ago with LSU not being prepared for a second quarterback to come into the game. Marcel Reed diced LSU up, and then last week LSU didn't stop the run with the quarterback at Jalen Milroe, and everybody's looking at the rest of the schedule, and they're saying, oh my goodness, LSU can't stop the running quarterback. Here comes DJ Lagway. Here comes Diego Pavia. Here comes Michael Hawkins. Like, LSU's not going to be able to stop the running quarterback. This is a disaster. And that's fair to assume that because LSU did not stop the running quarterback in College Station and got gashed for 4 hours on Saturday night. That's completely fair. But let's talk about DJ Lagway first. DJ Lagway is not a dynamic running threat. He's very athletic. He was a 5-star quarterback recruit for a reason. He moves well, especially for a 240-pounder. But he is not some sort of Jalen Milroe clone. He's not as good a runner as Marcel Reed. I'll just read through his game-by-game statistics running the football. Against Miami, he ran it 4 times for 20 yards. Against Samford, he ran it 5 times for 16 yards. Against Texas A&M, 4 carries, negative 20 yards, a lot of sack yardage there. Mississippi State, 3 carries, 22 yards. Central Florida, 3 carries, 11 yards. Tennessee, 5 carries, 1 yard. Kentucky was his watershed moment. The most dynamic ground attack he's shown as the quarterback of the Florida Gators was against Kentucky Wildcats. He had 9 carries for 46 yards. About 5 yards a pop. And then against Georgia, before he got hurt, 4 carries for 18 yards. You're talking about a guy who, generally speaking, runs it about 4 times for about 15 yards. He is not an option quarterback or some sort of dynamic threat on the edge that's hitting 60-yard home run. He's not Anthony Richardson. He's a good athlete. He can certainly pick up a first down. He can certainly outrun a defensive end to the corner. But he's not a great rushing quarterback. He's just an athletic quarterback who would prefer to do his work from inside the pocket. That's one piece to this equation. The other piece to this equation is that DJ Lagway suffered a hamstring injury 2 weeks ago that forced him to be carted off the field. Florida is probably not going to a bowl game this year, and the future of that football program in immediacy is on DJ Lagway. I do not believe that Billy Napier is going to look at his freshman quarterback, who is probably part of the reason he's still employed, and say, hey, man, I know you were on a cart 2 weeks ago, hamstring injury, but these guys really don't stop the run that good. Jalen Milroe, the fastest quarterback in college football, ran for 204 touchdowns on him last week. We're going to get you ready to run it 20 times this week. That's not going to happen. It's just not. I don't even know if DJ Lagway is going to play. But if he does, he's not going to be running wind sprints against this LSU defense 2 weeks after being carted off the field with a hamstring injury. It's just not realistic. LSU's got to prep for a running quarterback because they stink at it. But DJ Lagway is not that dude. And if he's not able to go and Florida does have to turn to Aiden Warner, he's not a running threat at all. Like, none. So this insinuation that Florida is going to run the quarterback all over LSU because the blueprint's been set up, I don't know if it's rooted in a ton of truth because Florida doesn't necessarily have that personnel at quarterback. Now, if you want to change gears and you want to tell me that Billy Napier has taken Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week to install some sort of wildcat offense with a super athletic dude back there to give LSU that look and keep that numbers advantage that A&M and Alabama enjoyed because their quarterback was a running threat, absolutely. I think it would be gross negligence if Billy Napier didn't put one of his running backs or wide receivers back there to take snaps and run read option. I don't know if they've ever practiced that previously, and I don't know how long it takes to put that into a playbook. I've never been to a college football practice where they're doing install. I don't know. But it would be negligence not to attempt to do that. Florida's really good at running the ball. Montrell Johnson is a big physical SEC back. He's been hurt for 3 weeks, but it hadn't really mattered because Jaden Ball and Jacoby Jackson have been excellent. Jacoby Jackson last week against Texas ran it 19 times for 116 yards, and Jaden Ball in that game as well had a really good effort running the football, had 88 yards. So they can run the ball. I realize in the Texas game they got down 35-0. You can create some garbage yards. I get it. But they're going to run the ball. As far as LSU preparing for two quarterbacks, they are doing that right now. And they're going to be prepared for what Lagway has shown, and they're going to be prepared for Aiden Warner. And that's something they're going to be out in front of. They certainly weren't 2 weeks ago, but now you know the injury. And we talked to some of the players yesterday, talked to Paris Shand, talked to Ashton Stamps, and that's something that they're looking at. But I think LSU fans, and it's natural, this is going to be a grossly negative week in and around LSU football as far as the fan base goes. The players, we talked to them last night, they're ready to roll again. They're ready to go to Florida and play a football game. I know the fans, half of them got to fire the coach, half of them quit on the season. I get how toxic losses are in this sport. It's why it's not my favorite thing to discuss. But I understand the fear that everybody's just going to run like crazy because that's all that's happened for the last 6 quarters. It would surprise me if you saw that on Saturday. If DJ Lagway runs the ball 17 times for 126 yards and 3 touchdowns on Saturday, I'll be shocked. If Aiden Warner does that, I'll be even more shocked. If Florida puts in a wildcat system that does have some success, I'll be less shocked. But keep in mind, if you put a wildcat back there, you don't have the passing threat that Marcel Reed or Jalen Milroe offered you the last 2 games. I get it. Marcel Reed only threw it twice, so you're not using it. But it actually exists. He is a quarterback who is capable of throwing the ball. You don't necessarily have that weapon with a running back or a wide receiver back there. I don't know if you want to call that sunshine pumping. I don't know if you want to call that not reading the room. But I'm here to give you my opinion and to analyze what is in front of me, what I've seen from Florida and what the stat sheet says, plus what I know about the fact that DJ Lagway has been eased into practice. And I just don't see Florida chopping up LSU with the quarterback run game. Billy Napier was on the SEC teleconference this morning. They asked him about DJ Lagway's availability. It was a word salad answer of basically, I'm not going to tell you anything. Said, yeah, he's progressing. He's out there. It's nice to see him. We're trending in the right direction. All these type of word salad cliches that don't mean anything. We'll get the SEC's first availability report tonight. I would be stunned if you saw anything besides DJ Lagway's name besides questionable. I think he'll be questionable until pregame. And last week in Austin, he put pads on and warmed up. So you're not going to know anything really until right before kickoff on Saturday. But even if he goes, do we really think the golden goose of that organization is going to be running around with a bum hamstring? I'm not seeing it. It's a break that LSU catches at this point in the schedule, but we'll just see how they handle things coming up on Saturday. That's our opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. We will step aside. We'll talk with our guy, JD PicKell, host of the Hard Count on 3 Sports, as we do each and every week. That's next on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com. If you live in a place where internet access is a little bit spotty, if you're sitting in a certain corner of a room in your house and you can't stream the way that you want to, one of your televisions doesn't operate your streaming services the way that you'd like, or your phone gets spotty internet somewhere in the house, you can raise those levels with mesh Wi-Fi. I tell you all the time about AVSS's audio, video, security, all those things they can do. They also handle Wi-Fi. And if your Wi-Fi single at home stinks, then boost it with some mesh Wi-Fi from the folks at Audio Video Security Solutions. Mitchell Fisher and his team do this kind of stuff all the time. You can give him a call. It's his cell phone. That's the beauty of working with a small local business. You're going to be dealing with the decision makers each and every day, not some minion down the line at a big box store. Mitchell's cell phone is 225-439-7920. You call him, you get him. We do it all the time in the Palmer house because they've put some things in where we live. So 225-439-7920 is Mitchell Fisher's cell phone number. Or you can check him out online, avssla.com. It's Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Chugging right along here on a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Nasty morning in the capital city here, but it appears things are clearing out. Should be a great weekend here in South Louisiana. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. That time of the week where we chat with our guy, JD PicKell, host of the Hard Count on 3 Sports. Find him on YouTube. Subscribe up to the channel. JD, how we doing?
Doing better, man. Doing better now. Glad to be on with you. And phenomenal slate, man. Excited to get into it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we got to go backwards before we can go forwards. A little surprised at the way that LSU Alabama went.
Oh, I was shocked. I was shocked. I think the thing that was shocking to me the most was the success Alabama had applying pressure. Because going into that game, my pick was LSU for the most part because I thought, hey, on the perimeter, I don't see any matchup that LSU can't win. Kyron Lacey's going to get his. Aaron Anderson's going to get his. And honestly, I think they still could have got theirs if we get a little more time for Garrett Nussmeier and he's able to sort that out a little bit easier. So it's all woulda, shoulda, coulda. And obviously, anytime Jalen Milroe goes for darn near 200 on the ground, something is not going right on LSU's defense.
Yeah, not much went right at all in the entire game for LSU. What does that make you rethink where things are under Brian Kelly here in Baton Rouge?
You know, Hunt, honestly, they don't. And I think that's probably going to be met with a little bit of objection from the folks in Baton Rouge because I've seen what's going on the social media side. I've seen what's going on our On3 message board for LSU. Like, people are not happy, and deservedly so. But when I zoom out, Hunt, I'm thinking, okay, all the reasons we still hired Brian Kelly to Baton Rouge, to me, feel intact. And I know it feels like putting lipstick on a pig right now, and it feels like I'm making excuses for the guy because, you know, it was an inexcusable performance after bye and getting beat the way that everyone said, hey, you can't get beat with the quarterback run game, and then that was exactly what happened. But when I zoom out, assuming LSU wins out, assuming they win the bowl game, you're back to 10 wins. And I think it's enough to where I look to the next season. I'm like, I think Garrett Nussmeier should come back. Ideally, you finish through the line here and sign Bryce Underwood, give him a year to sit behind Nussmeier. And, like, the future looks very bright. I think going into this year, too, and it sounds, I hate saying it out loud because it sounds like a cop-out, but, like, losing 3 first-round picks on offense, doing a whole defensive staff reset, like, this year, to me, making the college football playoff was always, like, in my mind, the ceiling for LSU. Like, if we get to the playoff with everything we're trying to reset on this roster and on this coaching staff, like, great. So I'm not selling my stock just yet. You know what? I still think Brian Kelly will win a national title at LSU before it's all said and done.
That's the hope. It just feels a long way away right now. Georgia goes to Oxford and just got manhandled, quite frankly. 28-10 was the final. What was your biggest takeaway from that one?
Biggest takeaway is if you had children, I hope they didn't get to watch the second half because that was just absolutely inappropriate for all ages under 18. But when it comes, my biggest takeaway was, okay, Ole Miss has better players than Georgia. And it sounds simple to say, but like I think we've talked so much about what you can and can't do through the portal. And I think Lane Kiffin sort of just dropped the mic on, hey, you can build a team this way. And we'll see if they can sustain it. We'll see if this is something that you can have, multiple years where you take a stab at a national title. But I truly believe with what they have up front, with the way that, like you said, they manhandled Georgia Hunt. They got home 5 times, a lot of times with 4 dudes rushing the pass. Like it was a clinic on all fronts. And it shouldn't be that way with Georgia having, nothing but top 3 classes on that roster. So all that's to say now, Ole Miss overall, they're a national title contender in my mind. And with Lane Kiffin being able to market this moment too to future portal acquisitions, feels like that sustained success is a lot more attainable than it was before that game.
What does it say about Georgia?
It says Georgia is probably not a national title team in my mind, barring the Kirby Smart Thanos snap, which I think is still somewhat on the table, but probably not as high a percentage. I think I'm so surprised they don't have weapons, Hunt. Like I look across the country and I see LSU with weapons. I see Alabama with weapons. I see Ohio State with more weapons than anybody. And it's like national title contending teams have a quarterback and they have guys that can go win one-on-ones. I mean, Cash Jones had the longest reception in this game for Georgia. I love Cash Jones, but a walk-on running back should not be the dude that has your longest reception of the game because you got a matchup on the defensive end. Like, I'm very, very concerned that there's not someone there that can pop the top for them. And quite frankly, I think they are overly reliant on what Carson Beck can do. A lot of discussion about his poor decision making, and it's totally fair. But like, I'm looking at Georgia and saying, okay, you want Carson Beck to stop pressing. How about you stop pressing on him? Georgia's averaging 38 attempts a game. And so the fact that they don't seem to have another pitch where they can go back to vintage Georgia and just punch you in the mouth running the football, a lot of concerns. And I don't know that it's just going away anytime soon.
Miami finally got clipped. We were waiting for it. To me, it just feels like that's probably not a team that I think is going to win 4 straight playoff games. What do you think about them?
That was exactly my takeaway. I think the first was, okay, probably not going to a national title unless Cam Ward becomes like another version of himself, which feels like it's asking a lot with how just high level he's playing at to begin with. I would say this, in the context of them making the playoff, Miami has been elite with a sense of urgency. Like they're one of the best second half teams in America. I think they're scoring more than anybody per game in the second half, in large part because they have had to these last few weeks. Defensively, they've been great as well in the second half, allowing 10 a game in the second half of those last 2 quarters. So I'd say all that to say I think Miami now, this could be the best thing to happen to them this season is, okay, you got that safety net removed. You have that sense of urgency now, hopefully, for 4 quarters in a row. And maybe you're looking at a Miami team that kind of flips that switch permanently here and runs the table and makes the ACC title game and wins the ACC and finds their way in the dance. So a lot of ifs, a lot of potentials, but I actually like Miami more now that they got that loss out of their system.
Where were you on the holding call in the BYU-Utah game?
I mean, to me, like, I get it. I'm fine with the holding call. Like, to me, it looked like a holding, if we're just going to be honest. If you're a Utah fan, I'm sure you feel differently. Like, to me, I'm zooming out, and I'm just like, can we just have an honest discussion about who BYU is? And, like, this isn't me trying to be down on the Big 12 or down on BYU, but I'm looking at the rankings last night, and cool, give them the 6th overall ranking, give them the 3 seed based on them projecting to win the Big 12, whatever. But, like, are we going to pretend that Ole Miss wouldn't ragdoll BYU? Are we going to pretend South Carolina sitting there in the 20s wouldn't absolutely just make BYU have bad dreams at night after what they do to them at a neutral site? Like, I would take any – I don't love Missouri, but I think Missouri and BYU – I think Missouri's probably favored in that game going into a neutral site kind of situation. So BYU's fine. I think they probably – deserve everything they've gotten to this point, and they're undefeated and all that. But, like, I just don't want us to pretend that they're somehow like this top 10 team that we need to take seriously when it comes to them matching up with a Big Ten or an SEC team.
I mean, that's an interesting point. And I said immediately when Texas and Oklahoma bailed and the Big 12 scrambled and pulled in what they did, the scraps, I was like, that's not the same as the Big Ten or the SEC. There's no circumstance where they should be afforded the same opportunity as those 2 teams with their champion just automatically getting in. I don't see it from that conference, and I guess you're speaking to that point exactly.
And Hunt, my wife went to Baylor. I went to Baylor for a cup of coffee for grad school. Like, I'm from Big 12 country to some extent. I lived on the West Coast for a majority of my life, I guess you could say, formative years. So, like, the first thing people love to say whenever you try and describe this, like, talent gap between the SEC and other conferences, I'm putting the Big Ten in that discussion as well. SEC, Big Ten, the talent gap between other conferences. You hear, SEC bias, just a bunch of good old boys from that region of the country. It's like, no, that's not the case. Like, anybody that actually just watches football and understands what's going on here, like, that's not a competitive team against South Carolina that's ranked in the 20s, or A&M for that matter, ranked at number like 15 or whatever they were last night.
Yep, no question. Speaking of those middling SEC teams, Arkansas has kind of gotten punched in the mouth when they've gone up a class. LSU had their way with them. Ole Miss annihilated them. Do you think Texas does the same thing in Fayetteville on Saturday?
I think they do. I think Texas probably benefits from being punched in the mouth, quite frankly. Like, same thing we said about Miami in a much probably more impactful sense for Texas. I think it's okay now in the new college football in September, October to get punched in the mouth. Like, that's probably, good advice for life and good advice for college football playoff in 2024. Get punched in the mouth early and then let's come back swinging. So I think Texas is probably going to start playing their best football here moving forward if that Florida game is any indication. So I like Texas a lot in Fayetteville.
Couple more. We're going to get to the LSU Florida game as well as the big one in Athens, Georgia. But wanted your thoughts on Colorado, how they're playing right now, 5-1 in the Big 12. They'll welcome Utah in to Boulder this weekend. Do you think that's a playoff team that Coach Prime's got?
Yeah, I think it is. And again, I just dunked all over the Big 12, so I'm about to double back now and say how much I think of Colorado. I think Colorado is the team that's going to win the Big 12. The thing that has impressed me the most about them throughout the course of this season is they have continued to fix their mistakes and do things that I did not see from them early on in the year. North Dakota State game, I think we were all watching it and we're like, oh boy, this looks like the same team that rolled out there last year and won 4 ball games, and they're struggling with an FCS team. And to their credit, man, they have become much more balanced. They get after the quarterback. They have a top 10 sack rate in America. And so that has allowed them to maximize, obviously, their fastball that is their passing game and Shedeur Sanders. So to bring this point home, I think the big thing I'm looking at here with Colorado is, okay, we know they can win football games. We know they are a good football team by, all accounts at this point in the year. Can they be a team that finishes? Because they're going to have now a bunch of teams that are fighting for bowl eligibility. But I think you could also argue Deion Sanders is going to be up against 3 of the top 4 coaches in the Big 12 if you're drafting Big 12 coaches, and Mike Gundy, Lance Leipold, and Kyle Whittingham. So I'm excited for it. It's going to be a good time, but I do think Colorado is probably the best team in the Big 12, and I think they win this weekend at home against Utah.
Vegas was begging for Tennessee money early in the week. They had that lineup at 13.5. It's now settled around 10. Georgia's favored in Athens. Do you see it as a 10-point game?
Yeah, hey, is the guy setting the line also Tennessee's medical guy? Because they must know something about Nico here. That's all I can take away. Is like why are we seeing a 10.5? I mean, unless they're just begging, like you mentioned, the good folks in Knoxville to put some money down and see where this thing goes. If Nico Iamaleava does not play, this becomes a very, very hairy situation. Gaston Moore is a talented / experienced backup for them. But he's not the caliber of a Nico Iamaleava. The trouble for me here, even if Nico plays, I can't get out of my mind how just stupid I felt, Hunt, walking in Sunday morning after picking Texas to beat Georgia, with Georgia back into an absolute corner and the world against them. Feels like maybe the world isn't against them here with them being favored, but after that Ole Miss game, I think Kirby is going to make that locker room feel like the world is against them. And so for that reason, I think Kirby's got one more in him, and I think they get the win at home. And I don't know that I have a ton of confidence that if Quinn Ewers is struggling to see the correct picture against that Georgia defense, a guy, Nico Iamaleava, who hasn't really seen the picture as clearly as you would hope just yet this year, I don't think you get right against Georgia.
LSU in Florida from the Swamp. It'll be 2:30 Central Time kick on ABC. Tigers are 4.5-point favorite there. Does LSU rebound or does it spiral?
I think they rebound. Do we have anything new on DJ Lagway? That's obviously a huge
Napier
piece of the equation.
Yeah, he talked around it today. Said he's progressing. He's out there. He's moving in the right direction. All the stuff that means nothing. And I'm certain he'll be questionable until that time comes. He dressed out on Saturday and he was never going to play. So I just think they're playing it coy.
And that's the thing. I mean, if you don't have DJ Lagway, as much as I appreciate Aiden Warner, who transferred from Yale, which every broadcast has now beat into the frontal cortex of our skulls and our brains, which I appreciate. However, like if you don't have DJ Lagway, there's no offensive output coming there, as much as I hate to say it. So if DJ Lagway in the game is probably a little bit more interesting. Regardless, though, I would take LSU to bounce back, and I think they fix a lot of the mistakes they had the week before at home against Alabama.
We appreciate some time, man. Talk soon.
Go Tigers.
JD PicKell, host of the Hard Count on 3 Sports for your college football fix. Subscribe up to the YouTube channel. He's with us every single Wednesday here on the Hunt Palmer Show. It's What If Wednesday. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Safety is a big deal in the bathroom. If there's somebody in your life that's aging, could be a hazardous spot for them. Let One Bath and Closets come in and mitigate that to the best that they can. Got non-slip floors. They can put guardrails around tubs and toilets, showers. They can put a walk-in tub to make things more convenient and safer. They can put a bench in your shower as well. That just makes the bathroom really, really less hazardous, I guess I should say. That can be dangerous. Falls in the bathroom can be a big, big deal. Try to do your best to mitigate against those. David Duvall and his team at One Bath and Closets do that all the time. It's OneBathAndClosets.com. That's the website. You can see pictures of their fantastic work. You can see the testimonials and start the process with a free consultation. It doesn't cost you anything to start the consultation to have David come in and see what they can do for you. If you're concerned about paying for things, they've got financing available, 0% for 18 months if you qualify. It's One Bath and Closets. You can find them online, OneBathAndClosets.com.
Welcome back to the Hunt Palmer Show. Here's your host, Hunt, the uniform czar, Palmer. Which uniform do you hate now?
It's not a uniform, but there were some bad courts in the NBA last night. Bad courts. Neon blue. Do we need to do that? Do we have to do that?
No.
Why are we doing that?
Because they've got to draw up some interest. The NBA Cup.
Is that what it's called?
Or sorry, it's called the Emirates NBA Cup because of sponsorship reasons.
Oh, Lord have mercy. That got worse. I don't know how that could get worse, but it got worse. I thought NBA Cup was terrible, and then you told me it was the Emirates NBA Cup, and that was worse.
Yes.
This is the world we live in. We have to fake tournaments around Thanksgiving in the NBA and then paint our courts blue to get people to watch. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good product.
Yes.
Let's do What If Wednesday.
Space. Reality. It's more than a linear path. Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question. What if?
Alrighty, first one here. What if I asked you to explain Bitcoin?
That's not going to go well. I could fake it, but it wouldn't be good. It's the blockchain, which is unhackable. It's the currency of the future. You got a lot of different fluctuating currencies. It kind of stays the same. To me, Bitcoin has always been people buying it to sell it, which never made any sense to me at all. Until I can buy a cheeseburger with it, like I don't get it. And I still don't get it. I've got some friends that have made a lot of money in Bitcoin. I'm not one of those people because I don't really know what it is, and I'm probably not going to have any Bitcoin anytime soon. So good to the people that had the Bitcoin. I applaud your efforts with the Bitcoin. I don't know what Bitcoin is. I got some dollars in my wallet. We're just going to go with that for the time being.
All I know is Bitcoin is value has gone up to over 90,000 per coin.
Apparently when Trump got elected, it went nuts or something.
Yeah, it's gone from, I mean, obviously it started at nothing. It was in the 30s and 40s recently. Now it's up to 90. So
that's a lot.
I don't really understand it very much either, but
I don't understand the principle of buying something to sell it.
Yeah.
I don't really get that, but oh well.
All right, next one here. What if Nick Saban ran for president in 4 years?
I don't think Nick's going to be running for president.
Probably not.
I think some people would probably vote for Nick. I don't know that I'd be voting for Nick.
He's had a whole career of stress. I don't think he wants to have 4 more years of it.
Here's what I think. I think we are like inching toward like a lot of people running for president. Like Trump's probably opened this door. Stephen A. Smith said if he thought he could win, he could run for president. And like 10 years ago, I would have said it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And then Donald Trump ran for president and he won twice. So I think that there are going to be people that aren't necessarily career politicians that are going to run for president. I know there have been some business people in the past that have done that, but I do think that you're going to see potentially more of that. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is what I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're going to see a lot more interesting. I mean, Kanye West ran for president in the last election. He didn't get many votes, but
I just don't know if Kanye would be the best president.
Well,
based
after
on some of the
last few years, no, definitely not.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe we should go in a different direction there.
Yeah, probably so. Next one here. What if Jaden Daniels quarterbacked this team?
That's interesting. They beat USC for sure. And then you go to the A&M game. I think they beat A&M too. He didn't turn it over those 3 times, I don't think. He just didn't really do that at all. Now, keep in mind, like the Jaden Daniels we know had absolute freaks on the outside. And I think LSU has solid wide receivers, but they don't have those 2 guys. I don't think Jaden Daniels would have mattered on Saturday. I think they just get beat anyway because maybe the running game's a little bit better than it has been this year because he's got that threat. But the defense, it just wouldn't have helped. We saw a defense that couldn't stop Jalen Miller last year, and Jaden played for two and a half quarters of that game, and they were down 2 scores when he left. So I think that they'd be how many games did they play? They played 9 games. I think they would be 8-1 if Jaden was the quarterback of this team. I mean, I heard it. Somebody said that. Who was I listening to that said if they can't stop Jaden in the NFL, they aren't going to stop him in college. But I can't remember who said it. I was listening to it yesterday. But yeah, I think they'd be 8-1 because I don't think he would have mattered on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also not sure about the A&M game because they just couldn't stop anything on defense.
Yeah, I think that he would not have thrown them 3 picks, and I think that LSU would have scored instead. Now, I mean, that's a lot to say because A&M was getting a rush on the passer, and like it was a tough environment to go into, and we saw Jaden lose some games last year. But by the end of last year, he was such a well-oiled machine. The ball was coming out so quickly. He was outrunning all these defenders. Like, I don't think it. I think LSU would have scored 35 points in that game, and they would not have given A&M 3 short fields, and I think that they would have distanced themselves from A&M. Fair
enough. Next one here. What if Darren Rizzi coaches the Saints to a 7-1 finish?
7-1? Oh, man, you'd have a decision to make at that point. I mean, 7-1 is loud. I want so badly for the Saints to start a completely new era, and this would feel like just continuing it. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're talking about here, because you started at that point at you were what, 2-7 when he started over?
Yeah,
took over, so you'd be 9-8. So yeah, you'd probably make the playoffs.
Well, no, yes, yeah.
So, but I think that would be bad. So I think it would be bad to keep things exactly the same. It's hard to say that if they win 7 of 8 to finish and the whole locker room's behind him. You saw Antonio Pierce kind of win that team over in his interim stint last year, and we've certainly seen that in other instances. But I want the Saints to completely start over. That would be my thought on it.
Yeah, I think I wonder if we're going to see more teams. I think overall, I think teams are still going to. You're still going to see teams going after the young offensive coach,
and they have one in Clint Kubiak. That from that tree,
right? But I do think that the success that Dan Campbell's had in Detroit may sway some teams to go for a guy like that with a special teams coach or a guy that is more of a just leader in the locker room and not necessarily calling plays on defense or offense. Maybe that happens, but I do think still that it's always going to be going after the young offensive guy. That's just the trend the NFL's gone on the last 5 years. But next one here, what if Ole Miss wins the national championship?
Oh, man. Like, I didn't like it when Mississippi State and Ole Miss won the baseball national championship, but that doesn't really resonate quite as much. Like, I've been living under the premise that there are only like 8, 9 programs that can win the football national championship. And for Ole Miss to bust through that ceiling and make that happen, that would really break my heart if Ole Miss could have that forever, because that's something that you just can't take away. So I didn't love the baseball one. It would really break my heart if they did it in football. And like, I tweeted this out last night. If you saw the draw that they got in this current spot, if the season stopped today and they were playing BYU and Penn State, like, I think they're going to win those 2 games. So that's real trouble. We got to find a way to somehow knock Ole Miss down a peg. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's got to happen at some point. How far is too far with Ole Miss for me? I would say Ole Miss getting to the semifinal is too far. So they have to win 2 playoff games. Would be too far for me to get. I don't even want Ole Miss going to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. I like the fact that they've never done that either.
The times have changed, okay? We've got a 12-team playoff now.
I don't want the times to change. In the old times, I was awesome, and now Ole Miss is awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, but
that's not good.
It's not, but that's just that's where we're at right now. All right, next one here. What if, I'm trying to get some from the chat, but I'm not sure. Okay, what if there weren't so many trolls in the chat? How much better would it be? Be a lot better.
I think the point of the chat is for trolls.
Yeah, I guess.
The point for the chat is not to solve the world's problems. The point of the chat is to bicker and troll, and I enjoy that. I'm glad they're here, and I appreciate it. And sometimes I read, sometimes I get buried in my screen here reading notes or scores or something, but I appreciate them for being here.
Yep. All right, next one here. What if someone gave you $3,000 to use towards golf gear? Because you definitely need that, Hunt.
I don't play golf really, so that hurts. Like, my clubs are old. I think my clubs are like 10 years old, even my driver. So I'm tempted. Like, there's so much better technology than what I'm currently playing with. I should probably handle that. But the fact that
the irons are fine, I think. You can go.
But I play so little golf that I think, and this was actually mentioned in that tweet that they said, whoever it was that sent in, I think I might take the $3,000 as an advance towards a simulator, because if I had a golf simulator at my house, then I would use that all the time. That's like so different than going to actually play golf. It doesn't take time away technically from my family. I'm still there. It doesn't cost exorbitant amounts of money if I've got it at home. So I think instead of getting new clubs, I would probably just use that. I don't know exactly how much simulators cost, but I think you can get them for just north of that. And so I would probably start there with trying to get a simulator put in.
All right, so we got a few more, I think. I'm trying to find one that somebody says. I think Dustin B said he sent one. Oh, let's see. It's on Twitter, I believe. All right. What if? Okay, that's what it was. It was the simulator golf one. Yeah. Oh, we got one more. What if Elaine could dance?
That episode wouldn't have been as funny, I guess. They wouldn't have minor league baseball stadiums doing Elaine dance-off competitions. Yeah, those little kicks, not a great look for Elaine, not a great dance, but good episode. Great show.
We even had the great Richard Condon. He said he really couldn't think of anything at all.
Yeah,
your coverage of the wide world of sports would even humble the late Jim McKay.
I keep Rich in the loop. It's why I'm here. It's what I'm here for, and I'm thrilled to do it. And I appreciate very much his ability to tweet at me 7 times a day. That is very, very.
It's impressive.
It's useful. it's a good use of his time. Thank you, Rich. Thanks for listening. Let's come back and close out hour number 1.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car on the lot at Genesis of Baton Rouge is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. How about 3 years of complimentary maintenance? Every new Genesis of Baton Rouge comes with that. How about 3 years of complimentary valet maintenance? Every new Genesis comes with that. Just thinking, it's time to get the oil changed. I don't have time to go sit on the service aisle. Wipers aren't doing that great. Well, all that can be taken care of. You drive to work. You tell Genesis of Baton Rouge, hey, I need to get some maintenance done. Okay. They drive a Genesis of Baton Rouge to you, drop it off. They take your car to the service aisle, handle everything that needs to be handled, complimentary, drive it right on back to you. That's part of being a Genesis driver. And you can be that at Genesis of Baton Rouge. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, you're probably going to be on Airline Highway anyway. Make one more stop at Genesis of Baton Rouge. They're right across from Women's Hospital, Airline at PICU. Just stop on in. Put yourself behind the wheel of one of these Genesis vehicles. Sleek, safe, stylish, fantastic. Get on by. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Check them out online, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Matthew Bruni in 12 minutes talking LSU basketball. The women signed the #1 class in the country today. Men traveling to Manhattan, Kansas, take on the Kansas State Wildcats tomorrow evening, 8 o'clock tip from the Little Apple. I believe the Octagon of Doom, I believe, is the name of the arena up there in Manhattan. Cam Carter will be familiar with it, where he played his basketball for 3 years. And LSU will try to get their first big win of the season tomorrow. We'll talk about all that with Matthew coming up in 10 minutes. I wanted to finish out hour number 1 here talking a little Saints. Ross Jackson has a great piece up at LouisianaSports.net. I'm going to steal some of his statistics for this segment, but it gives a little bit of an idea as to why the Saints had as much success defensively as they did against Atlanta. The Saints started the year playing some pretty good defense. They played great defense against Carolina and Dallas to start, obviously, but they were functional in defense against Philly, and certainly they were against Kansas City, at least in terms of keeping points off the board. Kansas City went up and down the field, but they stopped them in the red zone. So you were off to a pretty good start defensively, and then all hell broke loose, and you didn't stop anybody for about a month, and that's when Dennis Allen got fired. Well, the first thing, or one of the first things that Darren Rizzi did when he took over was he made Joe Woods the defensive play caller, and then they made some adjustments with the staff. They moved Todd Grantham, and he became kind of an advisor defensively, and then they needed the defensive line to have some hands-on coaching with Grantham moving on, so they decided to go to their pass rush specialist to coach those guys. And they made some staff changes, but they also made some philosophical changes that I don't think Atlanta could have been prepared for. And Ross writes this on LouisianaSports.net. New Orleans is very blitz heavy and very man coverage heavy on third down. Against Atlanta, on 8 of 14 third down defensive snaps, the Saints went zone. And they only blitzed twice on third down of the 14 third downs. That is a complete abandonment of what the Saints had been, and certainly what Atlanta would have been prepared for, but that was Dennis Allen's MO. And I'm not saying that was the wrong thing for the Saints to do. I think it's great to bring pressure on third downs, but what you did was you took a game plan that Atlanta had installed and you scrambled it because you didn't give him what they were looking for. You changed the picture on Kirk Cousins, and Atlanta really struggled with it. And the Saints were able to force turnovers and limit an offense that's got a lot of weapons and a veteran quarterback that's played pretty well. So that makes a lot of sense that the Saints would be able to catch someone off guard the first week after a coaching change. Now, you're going to look at a situation moving forward where teams now have seen that. And they know that while you still have those blitzes undoubtedly, because you're going to be running essentially the same defensive scheme, you have now shown you may change tendency. And teams will prepare accordingly. And that's what Darren Rizzi and Joe Woods and this staff have to figure out moving forward. It's the same thing we talked about with Clint Kubiak at the beginning of the season, where the Saints were cooking. We're going, all right, well, teams are going to adjust, and what do you do? And I don't know that we ever really truly got the answers to that because the Saints offense fell apart in terms of injuries. But the Saints defense is pretty healthy outside of corner, where you had a huge injury and you traded a corner away. But you're fairly healthy outside of corner. And you've got a staff that now has some tape out. And we'll see. I don't know that Jameis Winston and Cleveland are exactly the team that's going to expose it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We'll see. And then you've got a bye week after that. But it's going to be worth mentioning. And we talked all last week about that bump that you were going to get from a new coaching staff and a new philosophy and just a breath of fresh air. Plus, you've got these schematic changes that Atlanta wasn't really ready for. And it all kind of created this perfect recipe where the Saints were going to be able to win the football game on Sunday. And they certainly did. You look at them on third down, Atlanta was just 5 of 14 on third downs. Atlanta entered the week 7th in the league in third down conversions at nearly 50%. So you held them 5 for 14. That was great work. The question is, can you continue to build off that if you're New Orleans? I personally have some doubts about that because the backbone of your defense was your coverage ability, and now you've lost a good bit of that. But maybe Kool-Aid McKinstry and Alontae Taylor grow into high-level corners, and they can fill the shoes of Paulson Adebo and Marshawn Lattimore. That'd be great if that's the case. That's something you can build on for the rest of your team. but it feels like teams will start to figure some things out, and the Saints will have to continue to zig and zag to keep up with things. But I thought a great piece, very informative by Ross Jackson over at LouisianaSports.net, and I wanted to kind of point that out because it makes all the sense in the world. I didn't have access to the fact that that's what the Saints did, but Ross has some good numbers there. So Saints looking forward to Sunday's game against the Cleveland Browns. Jameis Winston's return to the Superdome. We talked with Sharif Ishak about that yesterday. I feel like Jameis is going to be greeted with a warm response. But then the Saints will try to confuse him. And my guess is they probably will, because Jameis throws a lot of interceptions when he plays a lot. And he threw a lot of interceptions last week, 3 of them. And I think the Saints can get their hands on a couple more balls coming up on Sunday. But Cleveland will have the template to see what the Saints looked like in week 1 under defensive play caller Joe Woods. That's going to do it here for hour number 1 here on a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. If you missed any of it, catch it on demand, 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. You type Hunt Palmer Show and like, subscribe, rate, review, and we always appreciate that as well. We started with our Genesis opening drive as usual, talking about LSU preparing for 2 Florida quarterbacks and whether or not Florida can hurt LSU with the quarterback run game. I talked about it at the top of the show. You can certainly find that on YouTube at Hunt on LSU. JD PicKell joined us in his normal spot at 1:15 talking college football. He thinks Colorado's a playoff team. He thinks Ole Miss is a national championship contender, and he thinks LSU is going to handle their business in Gainesville. You can hear that entire interview. It was at 1:15. It was a What If Wednesday. Talked about Bitcoin and Nick Saban running for president. Go back and check that out on demand. I'm fired up for hour number 2. We got a couple of great segments coming up for you. Of course, my SEC football power rankings had a lot of shakeup in the top of the power rankings this week. I did not feel good about my rankings last week. I feel good about the ones this week. I think I've got it just about nailed down. Subject to change for next week. Matthew Bruni coming back after SportsCenter. We're going to talk all things LSU basketball. Big day for the women, signing the number 1 class in the country, and the men headed to Manhattan to play the Kansas State Wildcats tomorrow. So come back with us after SportsCenter. It is a Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carbo, awesome dude, awesome people to work with over at the Highland Insurance Group. Whether it's property and casualty insurance that your business needs, or it's employee and group benefits. We know how critically important both are. As far as the benefits go, you need to have great benefits with your business so that folks will want to work for you and they'll want to stay employed with you. You also got to have great property and casualty insurance, because when that bad thing happens, cyber breach, which happens all the time. Hurricanes happen more than we like. Car accidents happen all the time. And they can be really costly if you don't have the proper coverages and limits in place. Jonathan Carbo and his team at the Highland Insurance Group can help you out with that. If you don't know what your insurance program says and you are a business owner, strongly consider giving the Highland Insurance Group a phone call or checking them out online. It's the Highland Insurance Group. They're right here in Baton Rouge. Check them out online, HighlandIG.com, HighlandIG.com.